Hi, everybody. Today's episode of Retention Zone is with two product people, Enzo from Cleeng and Theo from Primer. So welcome. Enzo, why don't we start with you? Where are you and who are you?
Thank you, Carlo, for this episode. So I'm the product manager for Merchant, the payments and billing products for Cleeng. I've been working there for the last year and a half. Basically handle all the commercial aspect of the product. And I come from a financial background from investment funds. Actually used to be a board member for Cleeng and now moved to the product team. And yeah, happy to mention a bit more about our current strategy, especially with Primer.
Absolutely. Theo, where are you and who are you and who's Primer?
Yeah, of course. Hey, I'm Theo. I'm the head of product at Primer. I'm personally based in London and been with Primer for 2.5 years. I've spent my career in fintech startups as a co-founder on maybe at best an average engineer, and then moved full-time to the product side of things. Primer is a unified payments infrastructure startup. We work with businesses to enable them to streamline how they accept payments, optimize payments, and manage payments. Super excited to be here with you both and have this discussion today.
Yes, because the problem we are trying to describe and maybe define a solution is how important are payments in subscription platforms, or in many cases streaming, but maybe any other platform that has a subscription and then a payment. And that's what Cleeng has been focusing on. And definitely I'm the one without fintech or financial real background. I've done an executive MBA to now 15 years ago, so imagine. So I feel safer that I have people that understand the matter definitely more than I do, even if, I've been a user, a product person in the space, but that's a different thing. So what is the problem with payments in your view, Enzo, first and foremost? Because you're clearly upstream from Primer in the process of content or services, subscription managing, blah, 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 and then payments.
Yeah, a few problems. Currently, we have a lot of, a good growth from the in-apps purchases with Apple Pay, Google Pay, and stuff. Thing is, those kind of payment methods are very much black boxes, and therefore, usually the merchants, they're not so used to understand how payment works, and when they need to handle all the web payments, then they're a bit lost. They're a bit lost on what is the best settings to optimize performance, what are the best payment methods to integrate, what are the best partners to work with, these kind of things. Dealing with web payments is actually a lot of different information, a lot of different fees, a lot of different integrations to do. And I think many businesses out there, subscription businesses in particular, face this issue. And therefore, they're not maybe able as much as they want to optimize their performance, because as I said, payments is a lot of things that need to be put together to work fine, especially if you want to go on a global scale. If you want to expand into new countries, it's usually very different from one country to another. The local payment habits, the way users are used to pay, also different fraud levels, this kind of thing. So with Merchant at Cleeng, that's what we try to address and to help our customers with, so that they don't have to worry about all this payment flow, and they just get the money at the end of the month, and we do the whole burden on ourselves, including connecting with payment gateways, thanks to Primer, connecting to local payment methods, handling the renewal logic, also the taxes, etc.
So basically, the problem is hyper-fragmentation of payment methodology in an already complex process.
Yeah.
Enhanced by the fact that many of these platforms or services are either partially global or really full-scale global, correct? Theo, how Primer is coming into this picture?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with Enzo's summary there. And what you end up finding is that merchants and businesses will start accepting payments, and it becomes a restraint for growth. It restricts how they can grow globally because they need to add new payment methods. It becomes a huge cost center for them. And so Primer's goal is to try and solve that problem. So we're a single integration working with likes of companies like Cleeng and other kind of SMBs all the way up to enterprise companies globally, where you integrate Primer, but then we allow anyone to configure something in our no-code dashboard. So an integration doesn't become a 3 to 6 month long project. You can enable it in a few clicks. And as you kind of think about all the fragmentation, you need to unify that fragmentation. There is a lot of considerations that go into that around retry strategies, being able to iterate fast, be able to unify your data and visualize it in one way so you can drive optimizations, automation to make sure that as you're processing millions of payments every month, you're able to scale seamlessly. And so that's kind of the problem space that Primer's focused on.
And especially focusing on so let's focus on the first step. So I'm a new customer, I arrive, and depending on the country I am in, there are different payment methods. So why is it important? What is the risk there? It's that I abandon the payment because it's too complex. I don't find the way I want to pay for. How is this new setup? Because something we didn't say, you recently announced a partnership between Cleeng and Primer. So if I understood well, Enzo, confirm please, Cleeng is integrating Primer, correct?
Yes, we are on the way to become integrated. I mean, as of today, right? As we record this episode. But yeah, we will be partnering with Primer to integrate with many different payment gateways. Some global ones, some smaller ones, and also in order to address some new local payment methods that we were not addressing for now, and also to have this flexibility of choosing the most optimal payment gateways for each transactions coming in, and having the flexibility to work with local partners which are more knowledgeable about some local markets.
I think you made the example of Brazil, correct?
Yes.
So explain, because I've been in Rio not so recently, but yeah, elaborate a bit. It's an example, Brazil. It's a big country, obviously.
Yeah. Brazil is actually growing very fast growing market in terms of online payments. And so, for example, in Brazil, you have a very stronghold from local payment methods such as Pix, Boleto, and stuff, which are being used by a lot of people which maybe don't have credit cards or debit cards. And so it's very important when you address such markets to be able to provide those payment methods for the users there. And so for Brazil, I don't know if I can name them, but we're using a local payment gateways. We actually have 2 options for now, and they have connections to those local payment methods, which is very useful because in such markets, if you connect with those players, maybe you don't need to have local entities, and you can use those local partners to integrate directly with local payment methods, which is harder to do with global payment gateways, which are also very useful in other ways, of course. But for such emerging countries, which are very specific, like Brazil, it definitely makes sense to go very granular and to build some new connections thanks to Primer.
And the way you say Brazil, I guess you speak Portuguese, or no?
I don't speak Portuguese, but I will very soon. I think we'll need someone on the ground. So I can apply for
that. Theo, so you were mentioning retry. So what is happening? Because it seems like, okay, I'm paying and that's it. I'm doing a subscription and I forget, and very often I forget. I have 10,000 subscriptions, so that's a problem on my side, to be honest. But what happens, with the automation? Can you describe that? Because I think it's a bit lost in translation when people think about it.
Yeah, of course. So everyone thinks a payment is simple, right? You put in your card data, or you click PayPal and put in your details, and you hit submit, and it's done. It's easy. Unfortunately, that's very far from the truth. Payments is a chain of different parties and entities talking to each other. Even the most basic flow will have anywhere between kind of 3 to 6 parties involved. And so as a result, there is several opportunities for there to be issues. And that is very difficult for businesses to troubleshoot as a result, because payments can sometimes be a black box when things don't go well. And so as a result, retries and building out a retry strategy is paramount to any business, especially a business accepting subscriptions. And if you think about the subscriptions journey, there are two types of payments. You have what is called a customer initiated transaction, or the CIT. That's the first payment where the customer is inputting the data. And if that payment fails, you don't just lose one payment, you could lose that lifetime value of that entire customer, right? Because maybe they abandon and they no longer want to subscribe to your services. And so having a retry strategy around that first payment is really important. The second thing is when you start doing that kind of monthly or kind of unscheduled merchant initiated transaction, that kind of subscription payment. And again, those can fail for a variety of reasons. Maybe that it's due to fraud rules on your processor side. It could be due to insufficient funds or an expired card. And again, how you handle that is really important, because if it becomes high friction and a pain point for a customer, well, you're going to increase the risk of churn and you're going to increase the risk of losing that customer. And so having a very coherent, well thought out retry strategy, thinking about all the different stages of your payment lifecycle is incredibly important for anyone to scale their payment system.
So with this approach, because I remember in some of the big OTT I was working with, the retry and the failure payment was an issue that even sublimated to the marketing team. In here, this should be in the payment team. Marketing shouldn't be, should focus on acquire, retain, not focus on how many, failed payment has been. So this isolate, if you want, the different, even in terms of people, the different teams to focus on what they're good at. Is it the correct assumption?
I think that's somewhat fair, but I think what you'll find with payments is it's incredibly cross-functional. And anyone that works in payments has to collaborate with everyone cross-functionally, from the marketing team, because they contribute to the checkout and the conversion.
Yes.
They have to collaborate with the operations team for post-authorization flows, such as dispute handling or refund.
What is sorry, let's be educational. What is what you mentioned? Post-transaction. Sorry, I lost it and I didn't know the term.
No, absolutely. So I refer to it as post-authorization. What I mean by post-authorization flow is when the customer does the payment, that's what's called the authorization. But after that, there is a range of outcomes. And it could be that the customer disputes it due to them identifying the payment, or it was a fraud attack, and they may want to refund the payment. And so all of these things impact the operations team. And then you have the finance team that need to reconcile all the payments that are received to be able to do all the accounting. And so it's very hard for payments to be put into one box, because actually it can impact the entire sequence of events and all the functions within a business.
And so one thing that is on the other end is super crucial, especially for the way you operate, is, okay, all these transactions have happened, etc. But you're giving, and now I think the new version has AI dashboard to your client, B2B client, to see what's going on, to decide retention strategy, etc. How is this being impacted by the fragmentation of payment, and how this integration with someone that orchestrate payments is helping creating a better, if you want, data intelligence, whatever you want to call it? It's a bit of a complex question, sorry.
No, it's a good one. Look, we believe that payments are driven by data, and indeed they are, especially for subscription payments. So we put a lot of emphasis on leveraging data as a way to improve the payments performance of our clients. And of course, with Primer, this is even more relevant because, as I mentioned before, we use historical data and compare it with each current transaction to decide on which payment gateways, such as Adyen, Checkout.com, Stripe, and stuff, to choose, because we see that from the historical data, for example, this set of transactional fields, then maybe, I don't know, Adyen is more efficient in authorizing such a transaction. So it's very powerful, and we can even use data to to also maybe switch from one payment gateways to another during the renewal logic. During the dynamic settings, you can say, oh, actually, the first renewing attempt was a failure with Adyen. And the decline reason is a bit blurry from the issuer, but we believe that if we present the data in a different way with a different payment gateway, such as Stripe, then it's maybe more likely that the transaction will be successfully accepted, for example. And we're even able to use data to decide on which days to retry your payments, which failed on the renewing date, these kind of things, or even on fraud, being able to detect some patterns, which in the past we saw were more linked to fraudsters, and therefore, using AI to also learn on historical fraud patterns and predict that such an action can be a fraudulent one. So yeah, different use cases with data, and actually we are building a lot of dashboards internally, but also for our customers in order to be able to visualize all the different KPIs that we have with payments, and being able to find where there could be some optimization gaps that we can average, and therefore change some settings, like I mentioned.
So basically, it's going one level deeper into the payment aspects in terms of that intelligence for your customers. On the other end, looking ahead, where are payment experience from a consumer point of view? What is the evolution coming? So, okay, this is good for what we know. We used to pay in that way, but I think there are a lot of new way of paying that in certain cases are coming. I was looking at all the many AI tools I pay a subscription for. They're kind of standard for now because they're totally unsophisticated, but I expect this to change. What is the new customer experience for payment in your view? I'm a bit from one and the other, but Theo, start maybe.
Sure, I can kick us off on that one. Yeah, it's a very big question and a very exciting question. At the end of the day, what everyone is trying to do is to try and make payments as frictionless as possible. As a customer, you don't want to pay. You have to pay, no. Right? And as a business, you don't want to add friction, but you need to accept funds for your services. So like payments is a necessity, but you want it to be as invisible as possible. And so what you're seeing more and more and more is just businesses trying to figure out how to make it as frictionless as possible. And so you have certain payment methods that are trying to solve that problem. You have certain payment methods trying to open up to different types of customers. Buy now, pay later is a really good example where perhaps on high ticket items, maybe there are certain consumers that couldn't participate in that service. But now with buy now, pay later, you can, and they make it seamless, right? But on the flip side, you have digital wallets that are growing in local markets. And so I think what you're seeing is just a drive to make payments as frictionless as possible. And I also think you see the regulators seeing this as well. I think if you look at something like 3D Secure, that is something that's very prominent in Europe. In the first iteration of 3D Secure, they enforced every customer to do two-factor authentication. And what they realized is the conversion rate tanked, because although that was great for fraud prevention, it sucked for conversion because it increased friction. And so the version 2 of 3D Secure introduced the frictionless flow and differentiated that from the challenge flow. And so what you see is regulators are attuned to this as well. And so I think ultimately the goal is to make payments as safe but as invisible as possible.
Enzo?
No, I completely agree with Theo, honestly. I would maybe just focus on a few things, especially for subscription recurring payments. Of course, no one likes to pay, right? So trying to make it as smoothless and painless as possible is key from the very start of the journey. And so, of course, that begins with a smooth checkout experience. But also, I think what is key to mention is you don't want to think about your automatic payment renewals, right? As a user. So of course we try to do it in a very much automatic way, and in some cases the user payment details have expired or have been lost for some reason, and there is this new technology which is very powerful called network tokens optimization, where you can store the user payment details into a token, and therefore, even if the payment details have been lost or expired, you're still able to process the payments through the tokens, which is connected to the bank. So this is quite a powerful tool to allow, again, a smoothless, automatic, recurring payment process. And overall, I think, again, connecting with as many local payments as possible, where the users have for example, their personal details already being registered and stuff, so they don't have to enter them again. I think it's quite powerful, and that's what we're trying to achieve with Cleeng and also with Primer.
And if I may, sorry, Carlo, if I may, just on the network tokens, it's such a fantastic point. The Visa and MasterCard see up to 3% authorization rate improvement using network tokens versus passing the raw card data downstream to process the payment. So these are the things in the background that can take place in order to make payments as frictionless as possible that maybe the customer doesn't see, but behind the scenes, companies like Cleeng and Primer are trying to figure out, so that businesses don't need to worry about payments. We will take that problem on their behalf, use the latest technology, and try and solve these problems.
No, fully agree. Actually, we have a Cleeng, at least we see uplift between 2 to 5% thanks to network tokens. So very good technology, yeah.
And that's another new thing I've learned today. I didn't know about that. So just to finish on the less fun part of the things, in theory, even if it's crucial, I think. Compliance, you mentioned security, because as you mentioned these things, as a consumer, I was thinking, okay, but is it safe for me? Is it secure for me? Because I understand this is also super fragmented because different regions of the world have different, how do you keep track of the regulation and the policies that are changing from both ends?
Yeah, I guess I can kick us off again. So, yeah, it's very challenging, especially as a business that's processing payments globally. You have so many different regions to consider. And unfortunately, it's not as clear cut as one might think. Just because someone says this is what you should do, doesn't mean it's enforced, doesn't mean that all the issuers, the banks even support it. If you take something like network tokens, even something that we've just discussed earlier, that should be enforced across all the issuers. That is something that Visa and MasterCard are pushing. But what you will see in certain regions is that the network tokenization authorization rate, the success rate, is worse, even though it shouldn't be. And that's because the banks don't support it. And so there is a range of rules that you have to constantly stay up to date with, but not just on what is being asked of people and businesses, but what is actually the reality on the ground. And that is where companies can either lean in and build out a payments team. And, if you look at the likes of Uber, I think they have 100+ people in a payments function. Or what you have now is businesses outsourcing that and entrusting companies like Cleeng, trusting companies like Primer to take that burden on their behalf. Because it's also not just keeping up to date. You then have to do something usually. So usually there's
adaptive
months of engineering work, right? Every time something new comes up.
And I think Cleeng point of view is exactly to serve this client in a way that they don't have to worry about that. But on the other end, they are guaranteed that everything is updated, adapted, etc.
Yeah, exactly. What Theo mentioned, what you mentioned, Carlo, is very relevant. We take compliance very seriously, of course, and we are very granular in terms of local compliance rules. Because as merchant of record, we are liable for making the payments compliant, and also the tax calculation and remittance part as well, which can be very complex, even in very developed countries like the US, where you have like 13 different jurisdictions, for example, 13,000 different local jurisdictions. I mean, so all this granularity that you have per country, it's hard to address, but that's our job, and that's what we do. And always keeping up with the new rules, such as the upcoming PSD3 regulation upcoming in Europe in 2026.
What is that? Sorry.
It's for now. It's PSD2 compliance. It's basically, I would say, data privacy for payments regulations, and PSD3 was going to be even more even more strict on who is able to hold funds and who's not. This kind of thing. And, yeah, it's a bit complex to explain now, but the rules keep changing basically, and it's very important to be up to date with them. And that's what we do at Cleeng. And also, we leverage our partners like AD and stuff to be on top of things. They're very helpful in this. But again, I still believe you can't only rely on payment gateways if you're a merchant subscription business. If you just rely on your payment gateways to be compliant, then you won't be fully compliant, because again, you need to handle the taxes. You have maybe some countries where they are not fully compliant because maybe they're not locally registered, this kind of thing. So at least with Cleeng, you're globally compliant, and you're always on top of things regarding the local regulations.
Okay, cool. And for the record, at least one term I know is merchant of record, which is MOR, very often used. It's basically who is taking the money from you, dear customers, dear subscribers, and legally, correct?
Yeah. So merchant of records basically means we handle everything from the user payment request to our customers' monthly invoice payout, right? So they don't have to worry about pretty much anything. So it's a bit like what they have with in-apps, with Apple Pay, Google Pay. They don't worry about anything. The difference is Apple Pay, Google Pay is a bit of a black box. They have very little visibility and control over what's happening. With us, they can see the dashboard. We can discuss some settings, some improvements, and also a key aspect, I think, is to mention the fees. With in-apps, it's very costly. With Cleeng, it's way cheaper. But yeah, that's what is a merchant of records. It's basically in-apps for web payments for cheaper fees and more flexibility and transparency.
Va bene. So I as you were talking, I was thinking the title of the episode will be a masterclass on payments with Cleeng-Primer. Let's see if this holds once I edit everything. So what can I say? Thank you for the masterclass, Theo. Thank you for the masterclass, Enzo. Ciao.
Thank you, Carlo.
Bye. Thanks, Carlo.